The Senate may also turn to judicial nomination. Patricia Millett to the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. Again, 60 votes would be necessary to move ahead with the nomination. Several Republicans say the D.C. Circuit Court's workload does not justify the addition of another judge. And now live coverage of the U.S. Senate here on C-SPAN 2.
The Senate will come to order. The chaplain, Dr. Barry Black, will lead the Senate in prayer.
Let us pray. Eternal Lord, thank you for the total access you have given us to approach your throne in prayer. Today, equip our senators to do your will, helping them to grasp the wonder of your purposes. Lord, give them the ability, power, and resources to complete your mission on earth, thereby achieving the destiny you have for their lives. Help them to seek not what they can get from you, but what your power can enable them to do for you. Fill their hearts with your unalterable, unconditional, and unending love. We pray in your sovereign name. Amen.
Please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The clerk will read a communication to the Senate.
Washington, D.C., October 31st, 2013. To the Senate. On the provisions of Rule 1, Paragraph 3 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, I hereby appoint the Honorable Brian Schatz, a senator from the state of Hawaii, to perform the duties of the chair. Signed, Patrick J. Leahy, President Pro Tempore.
Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
Following my remarks and those of Senator McConnell, the Senate will proceed to executive session to consider the nomination of Congressman Watt, the Director of the Federal Housing Finance Agency. The time until noon will be equally divided between the two leaders or the designees. At noon, Senator-elect Booker will become a United States Senator. Following the swearing in, there will be a cloture vote on the Watt nomination. Mr. President, October 31st has always been a special day for me, since it marks the admission of the great state of Nevada to the Union. There are always parades and celebrations at home, many of which I've sadly missed in recent years because of my responsibilities here. But October 31st is special for another reason, and that's not just Halloween. It's my brother's birthday. My youngest brother, 22 months younger than me, my brother Larry, who lives in Searchlight, celebrates another birthday today. It's my pleasure to wish both my brother and Silver State of Nevada a very happy birthday. Nevada Day is particularly special as it marks the beginning of a year-long celebration of our 150th anniversary of the battle-born state entrance into the Union. For thousands of years, Nevada was the home to Nevada American peoples. I have in my office across the hall a wonderful painting painted by a Nevadan. It shows the first non-Indian to see the Las Vegas Valley. And you can see there Sunrise Mountain, and you can see glimpses of the oasis that were there. There were a number of them in that valley. He was the first, as I said, non-Indian to see the valley, long, long time ago. He's in that picture mounted on this beautiful horse with all of his fancy regalia. But the fact is that pictures doesn't probably look how Rafael Rivera looked on that day, because he'd been lost. He was with the Spanish expedition and lost and was there by accident. It's a wonderful picture, and we honor Rafael Rivera in Nevada. So it's a special day for us in Nevada. On October 31st, 1864, right in the middle of the Civil War, Nevada became the 36th state of the Union. Nevada was only one of 2 states to join the Union during the war. The first was West Virginia, which seceded from Virginia to form a new state to remain part of the Union. And it gained its statehood before Nevada on June 30th, 1863. Union sympathizers had rushed to finalize Nevada's statehood in order to ensure Lincoln's re-election. Because remember, this is right before the election, his re-election. In fact, they were so eager to mint a state, they telegraphed the new Nevada Constitution to Congress. At that time, it was the longest telegraph ever sent. I should say the longest telegram ever sent, coming in at 16,543 words, costing $59,294.92. Well, Mr. President, 8 days later, President Lincoln was re-elected President of the United States. Nevada is only one of 2 states to significantly expand its borders after its admission to the Union. Eastern and southern Nevada joined the state in the late 60s after gold was discovered in both regions. Many Nevadans believe that the state was only allowed to join the Union so its mineral riches could help fund the Nevada war effort. I should say the northern war effort. But in truth, that's just a myth. It's not true. The tale probably stems from the fact that the Nevada Territory was created in 1861, so its gold and silver could be used to help the Union rather than Confederacy. So the state slogan, Battle Born, reference to the war, was an erroneous episode of Bonanza, which depicted a Constitutional Convention in Carson City, which I guess helped cement that legend, which is only a legend. The 150th anniversary of our admission to the Union is a wonderful time to study and reflect on the shared history that we have as states and as a nation. It's also time to build a foundation for another 150 years of innovation and accomplishment for our state. Nevada, from the mountains and high deserts of the east to the geothermal wells of the north, from glittering Lake Tahoe to the west, to, of course, southern Nevada with the Las Vegas Strip, from Indian country to the mining towns and ranching communities, is a unique state in today's modern Union. I, Mr. President, like to tell people that people don't understand Nevada is more than the bright lights of Las Vegas and the glimmering waters of Lake Tahoe. Nevada is the most mountainous state in the Union except for Alaska. We have more than 300 mountain ranges. Other than Alaska, it's the most dangerous place to fly a private plane because you have weather patterns that develop so quickly, and I've been involved in some of that as I've flown in some of those small airplanes around the state. We have magnificent wildlife. We have mountain sheep, of course, that are famous, or desert bighorn sheep. We have mountain goats in Nevada and the rubies in the north. We have the antelope. The largest antelope range in the world is in Nevada. We have one mountain almost 14,000 feet high. We have 32 mountains over 11,000 feet high. It's a magnificent state, and I'm so fortunate to be able to represent that state, the state where I was born. So, Mr. President, today and throughout the special year, we should celebrate everything that makes Nevada extraordinary and successful. So, happy Nevada Day, Nevadans. I also want to just take a minute to congratulate a man who's been part of the Senate for a long, long time. For more than 4 decades of service to the federal government and some 32 years here in the Senate, a man by the name of Carl Fritter will retire today. He began his career at the government printing office and gave 44 years of service to the federal government. He is respected by his colleagues in the Secretary's office and admired throughout the Senate community for his craftsmanship. Carl learned the art of bookbinding as an apprentice at the government printing office. He received special training in bookbinding from experts across the globe. In 1977, Carl was detailed to the Senate Library, where he eventually became director of the Office of Conservation and Preservation. My son, during one of the summers many years ago, worked in that office, and it was a great experience. He knew Carl. In addition to binding and repairing books, he's built many beautiful things, boxes, and other things. He is really a modern-day artisan. It's amazing the things that he has built and can build. He's built, for example, boxes to to contain gavels, books, and other works of art. Later today, when we swear in the new senator from New Jersey, the oath book that Vice President Biden will use to swear in Senator-elect Booker was made by Carl Fritter. So I wish him the very, very best in his retirement. He's going to go to Key West, Florida. He wants to spend more time there with his wife, Bunny, and his children and grandchildren. So I thank Carl for his decades of dedicated service to this institution and to the federal government, and congratulate him on a career of success of building and preserving artifacts here in the United States Capitol.
Mr. President.
Republican leader.
I'd like to say a few words of thanks this morning to a member of the Senate family who's leaving us today. After 44 years of government service, including 32 here in the Senate, Carl Fritter has decided it's time to go. Carl's been a real friend of my office over the years through his work in the Office of Conservation and Preservation, and we're sorry to see him leave us. But before he does, I just wanted to say how grateful we are for his outstanding work over the years. Carl learned the art of bookbinding in an apprentice program at the government printing office many years ago. He says he never saw himself as a bookbinder, but after working outside one January during the construction of the Kennedy Center, he started thinking about getting a job indoors. And his supervisors over at GPO gave him the opportunity. Carl would learn his trade from bookbinders from all over the world, each of whom taught him different techniques, which he put to good use in the Senate Library for many years. In 1990, the Office of Conservation and Preservation was created. Carl was named director 4 years later. In addition to binding and repairing books, Carl taught himself a lot of other crafts. I'm told he makes some pretty amazing decorative boxes and bowls, gavels, and books. One of Carl's most memorable projects was a fall-down box that he built as a gift for Margaret Thatcher. It was a box that opened up to reveal a plate in the middle with 2 congressional resolutions on either side. I'm sure Prime Minister Thatcher loved it. Carl, thank you for lending us your talents for so long and for giving so much of your life to this institution. We wish you and Bunny all the best in your retirement. I'm sure you'll enjoy passing down your skills to your grandkids. They'll have a great teacher. But the entire Senate community will miss your craftsmanship and your commitment to excellence, and we'll miss your friendship. Carl, thank you so much. Now, Mr. President, on another matter, given that October is National Work and Family Month, I'd like to take the opportunity to discuss an issue that's become increasingly important to working families, and that's the need for workplace flexibility. Yesterday, my colleague, Senator Ayotte, and I introduced the Family Friendly and Workplace Flexibility Act of 2013, which we hope will provide American workers with the flexible work arrangements they need. Countless Americans have become increasingly familiar over the past several years with the same reality: more and more to do with less and less time to do it. And while Congress can't legislate another hour in the day, we can help working Americans better balance the demands of work and family. The Family Friendly and Workplace Flexibility Act is a common-sense measure Congress can take to help alleviate that burden for millions of families by providing greater flexibility in managing their time. We all know working moms who are stretched between a job and supporting her kids, and baby boomers with elderly parents who require care and attention. A 2010 study conducted by the White House Council on Economic Advisors found that work flexibility programs can, quote, reduce turnover and improve recruitment, increase the productivity of an employer's workforce, and are associated with improved employee health and decreased absenteeism. Another study conducted by the Society for Human Resource Managers found that women's responsibilities have increased at work and men's responsibilities have increased at home, resulting in 60% of wage and salaried employees feeling they don't have enough time to spend with their loved ones. The American workplace has evolved dramatically since the industrial workplace of the post-Depression era. Yet the labor laws written during this time period are still in place today. And the makeup of our workforce has also changed dramatically. Today, 60% of working households have two working parents. 66% of single moms and 79% of single dads work as well. American workers have had to adapt to keep pace with this changing environment. So should our laws. Instead of sticking with an antiquated labor law, I believe we need to update the Fair Labor Standards Act to actually meet the changing needs of workers. That's why I'm introducing the Family-Friendly and Workplace Flexibility Act. This bill will allow flexible workplace arrangements such as compensatory time and flexible credit hour agreements, which are currently available to employees working for the federal government. Federal employees already have this. Allow that to be extended to businesses regulated by the Fair Labor Standards Act. Currently, the FLSA prohibits employers from offering compensatory time or comp time to their hourly employees. This bill would amend the FLSA to allow private employers to offer comp time to employees at a rate of 1.5 hours for every hour of overtime work. And I should add that this would be a completely voluntary process. An employee can still choose to receive monetary payments as their overtime compensation. This bill simply allows the option for employees to choose paid time off over work instead. There is no need for Washington to stand in the way of families earning the time that they need. This bill also institutes a flexible credit hour program under which the employer and employee can enter into agreements that allow the employee to work excess hours beyond the typical number of hours he or she is typically required to work in order to accrue hours to be taken off at a later time. This option is for employees who do not get the opportunity to work overtime but still want a way to build up hours to use as paid leave. Like comp time, this program is voluntary and may not affect collective bargaining agreements that are in place. Under this legislation, employers would not be mandated to offer flexible workplace arrangements, just as employees are not mandated to choose their benefits rather than direct compensation for overtime work. Both parties are free to choose what works best for them. Now I'd like to take a moment to focus on some of the protections in the bill. Under this bill, an employee may accrue up to 160 hours of comp time per year. At any point in the year, a participating employee may request to revert back to receiving traditional overtime compensation in exchange for their accrued comp time, essentially cashing out their banked time. Further, the bill also requires employers to provide monetary payment at the end of the year for any unused comp or flex time. I've also included a provision that safeguards unpaid comp and flex time in the case of bankruptcy. Thus, the bill takes steps to protect against any potential for lost wages in these kinds of circumstances. So, Mr. President, if anyone understands the benefits of comp time, it's our public employees. That's because flexible work arrangements have been available to federal employees since back in 1978. And if federal law already provides these beneficial workplace arrangements to federal and state workers, why shouldn't we make them available to all employees? Public employees enjoy these arrangements very much, so much so that the unions representing them frequently fight for comp time arrangements when negotiating collective bargaining agreements. A very important thing to note about this legislation is that it doesn't do anything to alter the 40-hour work week. Let me repeat that. This bill in no way alters a 40-hour work week or how overtime is calculated. Another way in which the Family Friendly and Workplace Flexibility Act protects employees is by prohibiting employers from coercing employees into accepting or rejecting comp or flex time arrangements. Mr. President, when we look at today's modern workplace, we see some companies like Dell, Bank of America, and GE that already provide flexible workplace arrangements to their salaried employees who are not subject to the rules under FLSA. Perhaps it's no coincidence that workplaces like these are also among the highest-ranked companies at which to work. Now is the time to allow private companies to provide the benefits of flexible arrangements like comp time to their non-exempt workers as well. After all, it's not just workers at some places of employment who are parents or family members who need to be able to take time off to attend a function for their child's school, see a son or daughter's sporting event, or care for an aging parent. It's workers at all places of employment. A report by the White House Council of Economic Advisors shows that nearly a third of all American workers consider work-life balance and flexibility to be the most important factor in considering job offers. Let me say that again. Nearly a third of all American workers consider work-life balance and flexibility to be the most important factor in considering job offers. It also shows that 66% of human resource managers cite family-supported policies and flexible hours as the single most important factor in attracting and retaining employees. These numbers are pretty telling. Mr. President, I'm pleased that the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce has endorsed this legislation. I also want to thank my friend Congresswoman Martha Roby for her leadership and dedication in advancing this cause over in the House. She introduced a bill to accomplish similar ends as the Family Friendly and Workplace Flexibility Act and actually saw her bill to passage. Now it's time for the Senate to act. The effort to provide greater flexibility and support for families in the workplace is one I've long supported. I've previously supported legislation allowing flexible workplace arrangements. This is the 5th time I've sponsored legislation to establish comp time, and I'm proud to continue that fight today. I consider myself very fortunate to be joined by Senator Ayotte in this effort. I suspect her predecessor, Senator Judd Gregg, would be proud to see her leadership on this issue as well. Senator Gregg was a champion for flexible work arrangements throughout his entire Senate career, and I was thankful to work with him on the issue in the past and gratified to work with Senator Ayotte on this issue moving forward. Also, Senator Lee yesterday introduced a similar measure that seeks to provide comp time for American workers. Senator Lee is helping with the effort for conservatives to find out-of-box solutions to the challenges Americans face today. I applaud Senator Lee for his commitment to this effort and look forward to working with him on this issue in the future. So, Mr. President, in closing, I urge my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to support this common-sense bill because it's the right thing to do for working families. And finally, Mr. President, on one other issue, I will be voting against cloture on the Millett nomination, and I'd like to discuss why. Ms. Millett is no doubt a fine person. This is nothing personal. Peter Keisler, of course, is a fine person, too. But our Democratic colleagues pocket filibustered his nomination to the D.C. Circuit for 2 years, on the ground that the court's workload did not warrant his confirmation. They did so despite his considerable skill as a lawyer and his personal qualities. His nomination languished until the end of the Bush administration. He waited almost 1,000 days for a vote that never came. The criteria our Democratic friends cited to block Mr. Keisler's nomination then clearly show that the court is even less busy now. For example, the seat to which Ms. Millett is nominated is not a judicial emergency. Far, far from it. The number of appeals at the court is down almost 20%, and the written decisions per active judge are down 30%. In addition to these metrics, the D.C. Circuit has provided another. The chief judge of the court, who was appointed to the bench by President Clinton, provided an analysis showing that oral arguments for each active judge are also down almost 10% since Mr. Keisler's nomination was blocked. And, Mr. President, these analyses show that not only is the court less busy in absolute terms now than it was then, it is less busy in relative terms as well, meaning when one takes into account the number of active judges serving on the court. The court's caseload is so low, in fact, that it has canceled oral argument days in recent years because of lack of cases. And after we confirmed the President's last nominee to the D.C. Circuit just a few months ago, and by the way, we confirmed him unanimously, one of the judges on the court said that if any more judges were confirmed, there wouldn't be enough work to go around. So if the court's caseload clearly doesn't meet their own standards for more judges, why are Senate Democrats pushing to fill more seats on a court that doesn't need them? What's behind this push to fill seats on the court that is canceling oral argument days for lack of cases and which, according to the judges who serve on it, won't have enough work to go around if we do? Well, we don't have to guess. Our Democratic colleagues and the administration supporters have been actually pretty candid about it. They've admitted they want to control the court so it will advance the President's agenda. As one administration ally put it, the President's best hope for advancing his agenda is through executive action, and that runs through the D.C. Circuit. Let me repeat, the reason they want to put more judges on the D.C. Circuit is not because it needs them, but because the President's best hope for advancing his agenda is through executive action, and that runs through the D.C. Circuit. Another administration ally complained that the court has made decisions that have frustrated the President's agenda. Really? Well, the court is evenly divided between Republican and Democratic appointees. And according to data compiled by the federal courts, the D.C. Circuit has ruled against the Obama administration in administrative matters less often than it ruled against the Bush administration. Let me say that again. According to data compiled by the federal courts, the D.C. Circuit has ruled against the Obama administration in administrative matters less often than it ruled against the Bush administration. So it's not that the court has been more unfavorable to President Obama than it was to President Bush. Rather, the administration and its allies seem to be complaining that the court hasn't been favorable enough. Evidently, they don't want any meaningful check on the President. You see, there is one over in the House of Representatives, a check on the President, but the administration can circumvent that with aggressive agency rulemaking. That is, if the D.C. Circuit allows it to do so. So, Mr. President, a court should not be a rubber stamp for any administration, and our Democratic colleagues told us again and again and again during the Bush administration that the Senate confirmation process should not be a rubber stamp for any administration. For example, they said President Bush's nomination of Miguel Estrada to the D.C. Circuit was, quote, an effort to pack the federal courts, end quote. And they filibustered his nomination 7 times, in fact. We have confirmed nearly all of President Obama's judicial nominees. Like I said, we confirmed a judge to the D.C. Circuit unanimously just a few months ago. This year we have confirmed 34 circuit and district court judges. At this time in President Bush's second term, the Senate had confirmed only 14. Let me say that again. This year we have confirmed 34 circuit and district court judges. At this time in President Bush's second term, the Senate had confirmed only 14 of those nominees. In fact, we confirmed President Obama's nominees even during the government shutdown. In writing, then, Judiciary Committee Chairman Arlen Specter, to oppose the nomination of Peter Keisler, Senate Democrats said, quote, Mr. Keisler should under no circumstances be considered, much less confirmed, before we first address the very need for the judgeship and deal with the genuine judicial emergencies identified by the Judicial Conference. Mr. President, that course of action ought to be followed here, too. Senator Grassley has legislation that will allow the President to fill seats on courts that actually need judges. The Senate should support that legislation, not transparent efforts to politicize a court that doesn't need judges in an effort to create a rubber stamp for the administration's agenda. I yield the floor.
Under the previous order, the leadership time is reserved. Under the previous order, the Senate will proceed to executive session to consider the following nomination, which the clerk will report.
Nomination, Federal Housing Finance Agency, Melvin L. Watt of North Carolina to be director.
Mr. President.
Under the previous order, the time until 12 noon will be equally divided and controlled between the two leaders or their designees.
Mr. President.
Assistant Majority Leader.
Mr. President, first I ask unanimous consent that an official letter of resignation as mayor of Newark, New Jersey, from Senator-elect Cory Booker of New Jersey be printed in the record.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I listened carefully to the statement just made by the Republican leader. It's a shame what's about to occur on the Senate floor if he has his way. The President has submitted the name of a nominee to serve on the D.C. Circuit Court. This is not just another court. Some view it as the second most important court in the land. Some of the most technical and challenging legal cases come before this court. The judges who serve there are called on not to just do routine things, but to do extraordinary things on a regular basis. That's why the appointments to this court are so critically needy when it comes to maintaining the integrity of our federal judiciary. What I heard from the Senate Republican leader was a statement that he would vote against the nomination of Patricia Millett, President Obama's nominee for the vacancy on the court. There are 11 judges authorized for this court. Currently, only 8 are serving. There are 3 vacancies. Ms. Millett is being suggested for the 9th seat out of 11 authorized. Now, I'm not going to go back into the history of our exchanges when it comes to the appointment of judges. I can make as compelling a case, if not more compelling, than that just made by the senator from Kentucky. But at the end of the day, those who are witnessing this will say it's another he said versus he said. What are these politicians up to? Who's right? Who's wrong? What I would suggest is don't take my word for it, and don't take the word of the senator from Kentucky. Take the word of the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States. On April 5th, the Judicial Conference of the United States, led by Chief Justice John Roberts, made its federal judgeship recommendations for this Congress. The Judicial Conference is not Republican or Democrat. It's nonpartisan. And according to its letter, its recommendations reflect the judgeship needs of the federal judiciary. The Judicial Conference, which judges the caseload and workload in the federal courts, did not reach the same conclusion as the senator from Kentucky. They didn't tell us we need fewer judges on the D.C. Circuit Court, not at all. They called on us to fill the vacancies. And that's where we should be today. Let me add just one additional note. What is especially troubling about what they're going to do to this fine woman is the fact that she is so extraordinarily well qualified. She may hold a record of having been an advocate and argued before the U.S. Supreme Court some 32 times. And she's received the endorsement of solicitors general. Those are the lawyers that represent the United States of America before that court across the street, including 3 former Republican solicitors general. So the notion that Senator from Kentucky suggests that this is some partisan gambit is completely destroyed by her letters of recommendation from Republicans as well as Democrats who have served as Solicitor General and have witnessed her fine work. This is about putting the right person in the job on one of the most important courts in the land, and sadly, unless the position of the minority leader of the Senate is not the position of all Republican senators, she may suffer from this partisan approach to the appointment of this vacancy. What a sad outcome for a fine woman who has done so well as a professional advocate before appellate courts, has been recommended on a bipartisan basis, the highest recommendations, and now, after languishing on the calendar, is going to be dismissed. She didn't fit into our political game plan. That's awful. The men and women who step forward and submit their applications to become part of our federal judiciary know that they're going to be carefully scrutinized, know that they're going to be criticized for some things in their past, but they do it anyway in the name of public service. And what I hear from the senator from Kentucky, she doesn't fit into the political game plan today on the other side of the aisle. I hope there are enough Republican senators who will disagree with the senator from Kentucky. We should give Patricia Millett an opportunity to serve on the D.C. Circuit Court as quickly as possible. Mr. President, I know there are others on the floor, and I want to make sure everyone has time to say what's on their mind today because there are important issues before us. But I do want to make one brief comment about another issue and ask consent it be placed at a separate part in the record.
Without objection.
2 days ago, Kate Mayer of the Greater Chicago Food Depository came to visit me in my office. Kate is one of my favorite people. Kate runs this huge network of food distribution in the Chicagoland area. Her warehouses are huge, and they are filled with foodstuffs, much of which is donated by companies that produce food so that it can be distributed in food pantries and other sources all around the Chicagoland area. Kate is one of the best, and I look forward to her visits each year because I know the fine work that she does to feed the hungry. 2 days ago, she came into my office very sad. She said, "I don't know what we're going to do." I said, "What is the matter?" She said, "This Friday, the increase in food stamps or SNAP benefits for the poor people who live in the greater Chicagoland area are going to be cut. It may only be $10, $15, but she said, I know these people. I know many of them personally. They live so close to the edge, it's going to call for some sacrifice on their part, and many of them will be hard-pressed to make that sacrifice." And she said, "I can't make up the difference. With all the donations coming in, all the charitable contributions, I just can't make up the difference." And I thought about it for a minute, and I thought, how would you approach a member of the United States Senate or House of Representatives and say, you know, this cutback of $15 a month will really hurt? It's hard for us in our positions in life to really understand or identify with the plight and the struggle of those who are not certain where their next meal is coming from. Most of those people have the benefit of the SNAP program, the food stamp program. Well, who are these people? Who are these 48 million Americans who receive benefits from this program? Almost 1 million of them, Mr. President, are veterans. Veterans who are not sure where their next meal is coming from. They get food stamps, SNAP benefits. Almost half of the 48 million are children. Children. 22 million children. And another 9 million who are elderly and disabled. So when we talk about cutbacks in the food stamp program, talk about cutbacks in the SNAP program, we're talking about these people. The veterans, the children, the elderly, and the disabled. Right now there are two proposals before us. One from the Senate that cuts back spending on this program to the tune of $4 billion over 10 years. I supported it because I think it closes at least the potential for abuse. I don't want to waste a penny of federal taxpayers' money on any program in any way, shape, or form. Senator Stabenow, chairman of the Senate Agriculture Committee, made this change in the food stamp program that will save us $4 billion and I think will not create hardship. In fact, it closes what may be a loophole. Now comes the House of Representatives, and their view is much, much different. They want to cut some $40 billion, 10 times as much, over the next 10 years. When you take a look at the approach that they're using for these cuts, 10 times the amount cut by the Senate, you understand how they get their so-called savings. They take almost 4 million, 3.8 million people out of the program. Children, single mothers, unemployed veterans, and Americans who get temporary help from the food stamp program. The House would cut $19 billion and 1.7 million people from SNAP by eliminating the authority of governors of both political parties to ask for waivers so that low-income childless adults under 50 can still receive benefits beyond the 3 months that they do ordinarily. This says that governors, looking at their state with high unemployment, understand that there are people in need. It is hard for members of Congress in the House or the Senate, hard for me too, to really appreciate the lifestyle of someone living paycheck to paycheck. But that's a reality for millions of Americans. Many of the people who are receiving food stamps are working. That may come as a shock to people. They're not making enough money to feed their family. I went to a food warehouse in Champaign, Illinois, went on a tour of it, and had a number of people who were explaining to me the importance of not only their work with food pantries, but the food stamp program. And I noticed one young woman who was part of the tour. I didn't quite understand why she was there. She was an attractive young mother. She explained she had 2 children, dressed well, and she was there, and I learned later why. She's a food stamp recipient. She has a job, a part-time job with the local school district, not a full-time job, and her income is still so low, she still qualifies for food stamps, SNAP benefits. She was there to thank me. And she wanted to thank me not just for the food stamp program, but because we changed the law a couple years ago and allow mothers like her to take their kids to farmers markets and use their food stamps to buy fresh produce. She said, it's almost like a trip to Disneyland for my kids. They've come to know these farmers. They look forward to meeting them each week. They give them a little extra apple or tomato or this or that. And she said, I just want to thank you. My kids are getting good food in these farmers markets, and it helps us make ends meet. A working mom with 2 kids, single mom with 2 kids. Those are the types of people who are receiving food stamps and benefits. The notion that they are somehow lazy, welfare queens, go out and meet them. Meet the woman at the Irving Park United Methodist Church food pantry that I met, who is trying to live in the city of Chicago on a Social Security check that pays her $800 a month. I challenge any member of the Senate or House, you try to get by on $800 a month in the city of Chicago. And she makes it because she has 2 food pantries that give her 3 or 4 days of food each, and she has food stamps. So, Mr. President, I'm going to ask that my full statement be printed in the record. But I want to conclude by saying that what we're talking about in food stamps is really a matter of basic hunger of children, veterans, elderly, and disabled who get this helping hand that makes a difference in their lives. We are a great and caring nation. I am so proud to represent a great state in that nation. But we are a caring people, and caring people do not turn their backs on hungry kids or hungry elderly people. We'd better take care when it comes to this food stamp program that we don't make cuts that are going to make their lives more difficult. Finally, Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that all speakers on the Democratic side prior to noon be limited to 5 minutes each.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I don't know if Senator Boxer was to be recognized at this point. I understood that Senator Boxer wanted 5 minutes, and I would yield to my fine chairman of the Environment and Public Works Committee for 5 minutes. And afterwards, I would ask consent that senators on the Republican side be allocated 10 minutes each.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I want to thank the ranking member of the Budget Committee. I know he has a lot on his plate, and he and I work well together, and I thank him. I wanted to put in the record my strong support for Congressman Mel Watt to be the director of the Federal Housing Finance Agency. May I do that? Thank you very much. I hope we have a resounding vote for Mel Watt. He is a terrific person. He's got the heart, he's got the intelligence, and he has the experience. And now I'd ask if I could speak as if in morning business the rest of my time.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I am so pleased to be down here with some really good news out of California and how Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, is working in our great state. People are phoning, people are going online, people are talking with insurance agencies, with health insurance companies. They're getting health care coverage, some for the very first time, many for the first time. It's affordable. All good policies that will be there when they're needed. And yes, we know a small percentage, as the President addressed yesterday, are being told that their old policies are not going to be offered to them anymore. But all of those folks know they can get better policies. They can't be turned away. There'll be competition for their business. Many of them will get subsidies. So I think at the end of the day, this health care story, although quite bumpy, as we know the prescription drug launch was years ago, we know it's bumpy. And we're angry that it's bumpy, both sides of the aisle. But at the end of the day, I think it's going to be good. I want to read to you some of the comments made by people when they send it into Covered California. That's coveredca.com. Here's one who just got an affordable health care policy. Thank you so much, President Obama, and everyone who works there. This was so much easier than I thought it would be. I'm so grateful to get medical insurance. Thank you. Another, great phone support. Thank you. No wait time. The assistant answered all my questions clearly. Another, great job. Easy. What's all the fuss about? Another, wow, this was easy, and my monthly premiums are significantly less than my previous employer's health care coverage before the Affordable Care Act. And one who I thought just really summed it up, thank God Almighty, I'm free at last. Now, these are the real people. These aren't the people who have a political agenda. They are real people. They are Democrats. They are Republicans. They are independent voters. They have had a hard time getting health insurance. And because of the Affordable Care Act, with all its glitches on the national website, and we acknowledge them, it's working. It's working in our state, and eventually, once that national website is fixed, it will work for everybody. So I want to put some real numbers on this, Mr. President. 180,000 Californians have begun the process of signing up for coverage. 180,000 families. Imagine the relief that they have. Over 2 million unique visitors have been to coveredca.com. And there have been 200,000 calls to Covered California's call centers. Average time, wait time is under 4 minutes, and average total call time is less than 16 minutes for Californians enrolling in coverage and asking questions. And we have 4,000 insurance agents and clinic workers trained so far and certified. They have their badges so they can offer in-person help to those who are looking to enroll. I went very recently to a clinic in my home county, and I can tell you the excitement there is palpable. The doctors, the nurses, the assistants, the people in the waiting room, everybody knowing that they can get either insurance on the exchange or insurance through an expanded Medi-Cal program. We have millions of people who will be able to sign up on the exchanges. We have about 1.7 million people who could sign up for the expanded Medi-Cal program. Do I have any time remaining, Mr. President?
5 seconds.
5 seconds. Well, I hope we get these two wonderful nominees on the way to confirmation today, and I hope we'll be patient and all work together to fix the problems with health care, but I think at the end of the day, it's going to be great. Thank you very much.
Mr. President.
Senator from Alabama.
Mr. President, I wanted to share some thoughts about the filling of the District of Columbia Court of Appeals circuit judgeships. I've been involved on that issue for well over a decade. We started looking at the case numbers when President Clinton was in office. I, along with Senator Chuck Grassley, both Republicans, blocked President Bush from nominating, filling a vacancy that that court did not need, and they wanted to fill it. And let's be frank, presidents want to fill the D.C. Court of Appeals because they think they can shift the balance there and be able to advance their agenda throughout the judicial process, because a lot of cases, key cases, are filed there, and the lobbyists and outside forces that care about judges want the presidents to put their kind of people on, maybe even their law partner or their friend or their political buddy on that court. And we've done that, and there's some great judges on the court. But I'm ranking Republican on the Budget Committee also, serve on Judiciary and the Budget Committee. And we have no money in this country to fund a judgeship that is not needed. Now, last time we were able to move one of those judges to the Ninth Circuit where it was needed. But this time, we're not. It's clear that the caseloads continue to fall. The number of cases per judge in the D.C. Circuit continue to decline. Senator Grassley has been a champion of this for years. He chaired the court subcommittee of the Judiciary Committee. I chaired it after he did. And we've seen these numbers. And Senator Durbin says, oh, it's a shame. It's a shame that these nominees don't get confirmed. Well, as Senator McConnell noted, it was a shame, I guess, that Peter Keisler, a fabulous nominee, didn't get confirmed. But in all honesty, they didn't need that slot, and they don't need any of the 3 slots today that are vacant. They do not need to be filled. Congress has no responsibility to fill a vacancy that's not needed, and we shouldn't do it. Each one costs about $1 million a year. That's what it costs to fill a judgeship. We've got needs around the country. We do have certain needs around the country, and we're going to have to add judges. Why would we fill judges we don't need and not fill judges we do need? So that's my fundamental view about it. And I would just say this, Mr. President, it's not going to happen. We are not going to fill these slots. This country is in deep financial trouble. The majority basically is saying, oh, the Budget Control Act, and oh, we've cut to the bone. We can't find another dime in savings. You know what the problem is, America? You haven't sent us enough money. If you would just send more money to Washington, we could spread it around and everything would be fine. That's basically what we're hearing from the leadership. No more cuts. In fact, the Budget Control Act reduced spending too much. All this critically important. Every dollar we spend is critically important. And we can't reduce a dime of it or even the growth of it. That's what we're being hearing. Send more money to Washington. We want to raise taxes. We're openly about demanding increases in taxes to fund whatever it is we want to spend here. Well, is there any waste, abuse in this government? There absolutely is. Look at this chart. Senator Durbin, he's on the Judiciary Committee. He's been involved in this. He knows these numbers. There's nothing phony about what I'm showing you today. It's absolute fact. Total appeals filed per active judge. These are the judges on the court today. The D.C. Circuit has 8 judges. They have 8 judges. Per judge, the case appeals that are filed to their court in the D.C. Circuit is 149. And the average per circuit judge in America is 383. The average is 2.5 times that number. We do not need to fill these slots. Look at the 11th Circuit. They have vacancies, but at this point, they're doing almost 800 cases per judge per year. Think about that. The Second Circuit, that's a Manhattan. That's a very important circuit with very complex cases, more than 2.5 times the number of cases in the D.C. Circuit. And remember, this is the current number of judges, colleagues. This isn't if we were to add 3 more judges. If we added 3 more judges, it would be about 100, a little over 100 cases per judge, not 149. This is absolute fact. And they take the entire summer off. No other circuit does this. They've canceled oral arguments that they had scheduled because there were no cases to argue. They take the summer off. I talked to one circuit judge in another circuit and said, well, at least one of the judges in D.C. Circuit goes around the country sometimes and helps out, but none of our judges can because we're so busy we don't have time to do it. Most of our judges are working very hard. I am a total believer in the integrity and the value of the federal judiciary. I respect them greatly. They do important work. But it's just so happened in the course of our American system here that the D.C. Circuit is at a point where it is the lowest caseload per judge in decades of any circuit. And it needs to be fixed, and the number of cases continues to decline. So what I would say to my colleagues is, I believe we should give deference to the President in nomination of judges. I voted, I'm sure, close to 90% of the judges President Obama has submitted. I voted for most of them, almost 90%, I would suggest. But I'm not going to support 3 judges that we don't need. The last thing we need to be doing is burning on the Mall of the United States of America $3 million a year to fund a judgeship we don't need. There are other places in this government we can cut wasteful spending too, but this one highlights it. And so I would suggest to us it's a test to this Senate. It's a test for all the members of the Senate. You say there's no place to save money in Washington. You say you found every bit of waste, fraud, and abuse that there is. Well, look at this court. I'm not condemning any of the nominees. I'm not complaining about that, their quality, their ability. I'm saying that taxpayers of America should not have extracted from them another $3 million a year to fund 3 judges that absolutely are not needed, particularly when we have legitimate needs in other courts around the country that need to be filled or added judges to. So look at this. 11th Circuit, my circuit, almost 800 judges, 800 cases per judge filed. This circuit, 149. And they want 3 more judges? Not so. Mr. President, I believe we have a 10-minute limit, and how much time is left on this side?
Senator has 1 minute remaining.
So in conclusion, I appreciate the opportunity to be here. It looks like we will vote on the Millett nomination maybe later today. So with no personal criticism of that nominee in any way, I think it is important for us to say we just don't need these slots. We are not going to fill them. Not one of the 3 needs to be filled. We're not going to fill any of them. And we're going to honor the finances of the American people. And I would just once again express my appreciation to Senator Chuck Grassley, who ranking member of the Judiciary Committee, who has led the fight on this issue for a number of years. I've worked with him on it. We have legislation to transfer these judgeships to other places. That's what we should be doing, move them to where they're needed, and it's been great to work with Senator Grassley. I thank the chair and would yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Senator from North Carolina.
Mr. President, I rise today to speak about Congressman Mel Watt.
An inquiry under the UC, well, we're going to divide 30 minutes per side, and was that the intent of the unanimous consent request?